Look, there won't be as many sources for this video because it's mostly from a couple of books I've read and, never thought I'd say this, but a very interesting program I was listening to on ABC Radio National. Oh. Still consistent though. I always said the only good assets of the ABC are Philip Adams and Sean McAuliffe. Other than that, nuke it to the ground. Now, today we're going to be doing something a little different than obsessively focusing on New South Wales state politics. We're going to be obsessively focusing on New South Wales state politics in the past. We're going to be celebrating the life of the man who I think might be the grandfather to Gigi Allen, Jack Lang, or as Miss Love from the podcast likes to call him, Jack LaLanne.
Jack LaLanne?
Don't worry, I'll save you the Jack LaLanne way.
Doesn't he look strong enough to do that? He could headbutt Colossus and afterwards he'd look like this.
No, I don't have a concussion, I'll just walk it off.
He was the first Australian leader to be dismissed by the Crown, the OG Whitlam, but replaced Goff's hippie 70s pants with a man that looks like a 20s bodybuilder. Due to the era he was in power, most of the descriptions we have of him are
eyes like coal from the depths of hell, a booming voice that would rattle a man to his core and make him cry for his mother. Why, legend has it he built the harbour bridge by fashioning the steel with his bare teeth.
Essentially what they were saying is he was tall. Take me back. Back to when basic primal dominance like, yes, I'm the biggest, converted to success in public office instead of these Dungeons and Dragons nerds that get elected now. This man deserves a swirly. This man deserves to be PM. Yeah! Look at the power of this man.
If you want to consult this man, Sir Robert Gibson, tell him to come here. Order him to come here.
That was him in his 80s. If you were that imp from Game of Thrones, surely you'd be asking him to fight on your behalf, even as a withered old man. They wouldn't get on though, as a Lang never pays his debt. Huh? 30s political references that are New South Wales centric. Is there a more relatable subject? Not for me. It'll make sense soon, so don't you worry, you out of the loop c***. He was Premier during the Great Depression and still managed to introduce revolutionary policy like a pension for war widows, demanded workers receive minimum wage, halted landlords from throwing out tenants on the streets, judging from his photo, twirled one of those old-timey weights above his head just to lift the state's spirits. Pretty sure that was him actually, and if so, mission accomplished. I'm happier. Abolished school fees so everyone in New South Wales could get a decent education, allowed women to sit in every chamber of Parliament. The first leader in the British Empire to do so, actually, which I think we can all agree is great in principle, but if he didn't, we wouldn't have Gladys Berejiklian, so you do have to weigh that up. Now, seeing as it was the Depression, Britain was always demanding that Australia pay back its debts. How did we get those debts? By fighting Britain's war. We accumulated it by purchasing their equipment and their artillery so that our men could be mowed down in Gallipoli, and the British had the nerve to turn around after we bled for them and said,
"It'll be 5% interest for the pleasure, chaps. Jolly good."
Absurd. Almost as absurd as this. 5% was astronomically high for the time because Nimble didn't exist yet. What was even more insane is due to those old ideas of honour and a man is only as good as his word and you have to pay back debt. Pfft, no, you don't. You just change your name to Alfonso Kickass and wear a fake moustache.
See? Friendly kickassies.
Seriously though, don't be fooled, it's actually me. Though I have changed my name to Friendly Kickassies. Arse Hat of the Year. All the other premiers signed up to what is known as the Premier's Plan. Now, I'm pretty sure that if you opened up the cover, the plan would just be one sentence. Whatever the Bank of England wants is what the Bank of England gets. Except this duck dressed like Charlie Chaplin. That's my duck, see? As a side note, what I love about cartoons of yore is it was the weekly, except, you know, not painful and shit. Because bankers didn't have a complete monopoly on the press back then, some publications used to tell the public the truth. Look at this one. Everyone lining up for the bread line while a banker says,
according to plan.
Get it? In reference to the Premier's Plan. Come on, as if you didn't do a little
Yes.
Just to warn you, this is going to turn into a PewDiePie meme review of yesteryear, but every other state, as well as the federal Labor government... That doesn't feel right. But anyway, the federal Labor government pushed for the Premier's Plan, which, see, to everyone who's constantly whining that I never point out bad stuff Labor does, I do. It's just I have to go back to 30 to find anything. Even then, cancelled out because Jack Lang was the Labor Premier of New South Wales, and back then that was pretty much being the Prime Minister of Australia, so thank God he said,
Don't worry, I'll save you the Jack LaLanne way.
he said, no, we're going to postpone paying back our debts until after the Depression, and seeing as the British got a reduction on their debts that they owed to the Americans of 40%, why can't we? 3% interest was more in line with what the rest of the world was paying back anyway, and this is where it gets scary. He also said, we're no longer going to value Australia by how much gold it has. We're going to value it on every sheep, Featherston's bag of leeches, mustache comb, whatever else people in the 30s valued, mercury sandwiches. We're moving to a standard based on goods, not gold. Revolutionary. Back then, you might as well have told people that one day the mascot for the biggest food chain on earth was going to be a serial killer. And instead of cutting government spending, we're going to increase it to get the economy moving again. ScoMo still hasn't caught up with that concept today. Think about what a genius this man was. Not only did he wrestle power away from a party and political establishment that hated his guts, he also, in his spare time, came up with Keynesianism a decade before Keynes did. What have you done with your life?
Once I went to New Zealand and looked at where they filmed Lord of the Rings.
Now, he was having enough trouble getting the Lang Plan passed with the federal Labor government, but then along came Joseph Lyons. Boo! Look at him, softened from a life of luxury, George and dandy motherfucker. More melted butter than man. Compare the two men. What is the first sound that comes to mind when you look at them? Jack Lang. Yeah. Joseph Lyons. Lyons was willing to wreck the Australian economy just to get rid of Lang. He passed the Financial Agreement Enforcement Act. It's a nice way of saying New South Wales no longer had control of its own money. So Jack Lang said, F you, took all the money out of the New South Wales Treasury, put it in the Union's trade hall so the feds couldn't get it, and I think this was in Keating's biography. I can't remember where I read this, but I'm pretty sure he hired a bunch of out-of-work foresters to guard the trains hall, and every time the debt collectors came, righto lads, let him have it! They drubbed him. They gave them a drubbing they wouldn't soon forget. What a better time! An age where stick beatings were so frequent they had their own word. A little thing you'll notice reading Jack Lang's Why I Fight by Jack T. Lang. He f***ing hated banks, and he used to refer to monetary policy as the cult of bankers. And when this all went down, he told the public servants, screw the banks altogether. No more checks. You go to town hall and you get your wage directly from there. He essentially made New South Wales a cash economy. And you know what that meant? For a brief shining moment in this nation's history, banks didn't control the economy. I mean, they did in every other state, but still, to quote this French movie no one knows, Brice de Nice. No wonder tens of thousands of people used to march on the street with his face on placards. Could you imagine anyone doing that for Mike Baird that doesn't look like they should be sold to a freak show? It's got my back. People used to proudly wear pins to work that read Lang is right. And still do. Jealous cucks? Because I'm selling them right now at friendlyjordies.com. That's right, I'm profiting off a dead cult of personality. And as a staunch opponent of communism, Jack Lang would be proud. Now, look at this epic meme. I can't believe I haven't seen it yet, guys. Wow. See all the bodies on the ground? Those are Labor premiers and prime ministers that the banks had crushed. Only Lang was standing because of how deeply adored by the public he was. So the banks did what the mining industry did to Whitlam. They plotted with the governor to dismiss him. I guess this is why they don't teach you about this at school, nor do they teach you about how Whitlam was really dismissed, because it just goes to show that democracy is a sham. Easily the most popular leader Australia's ever had was ousted because 4 people didn't like him? Naturally, it had massive repercussions. His dismissal was the closest Australia ever got to a civil war. When he heard about it, Lang was hatching a plot to kidnap the governor. The military, run by the federal government, said to Lyons, just say the word and we'll forcibly remove him, while the police, because cops are tops, said that if they try and do that, we'll back you, Lang. And because it was post-World War I, that would have been a fairly fair fight. We were this close to another bloodbath, this time on Australian soil. But because Lang had a couple of things Josh Frydenberg definitely doesn't have, like integrity and a brain, he put the state's interests first to the very end. He said, no, I don't want any more widows added to that pension I just created, as that would not be fiscally responsible. And decided to step down. Stylish c***. How else would you describe him? Any other nation would celebrate a man who was that much of a visionary and fighter. When he was dismissed, you know how many people came out to march for him? 400,000. Sydney's population at the time was 1 million. Only 300,000 nationwide marched for climate action last year. He was more popular than Earth. If you looked at a picture of planet Earth back then, I'm pretty sure Australia would just have a Lang was right badge over the top of it. I'd be marching too, if I had legs. Surely just based on that one fact, we should be learning something about him in our education system. They don't want you to know about his existence. There's a reason schools don't want you to learn about him, and that's because whether it's Jack Lang standing up to the British, or Gough Whitlam standing up to the Americans, or Kevin Rudd telling international mining companies the same thing, one nation, United Australia, they can pump out all the cheap marketing they like. There really is only one party that has a proud 100-year history of standing up for Australia though, and that is the Australian Labor Party. It's true. What happens every time they install their Tory counterpart, subservient dogs that they are? They do exactly what the power that installed them tells them to do, which is why they're in government 70% of the time. That's why we're going to rekindle it by selling Lang Gang shirts. Are you in or are you out? There's only one way to be in, and that's by getting a shirt. And I want you to, because I want this country to have better role models than a criminal, a horse, and a donkey. Can at least half our heroes be human? Like this video, subscribe, get a shirt/badge, show your patriotism by engaging in a form of hawking that is only shameless enough to persist on the net and in Paddy's markets, because I remember. He'd probably hate that, but still, get the f off me.
Please share and comment below.
Come in.